Okay. My name is Lupe Stevens, and I am a program director for Nebraska VR of Transitions. And today with me, I have Amy Hancock. Amy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Amy Hancock. I am a program funding specialist too with the Nebraska VR. Basically, my job is to work through the funding part of each of the contract request and then work with your billing department. Also on our billing team are Melissa Johnson and Pamela Martin. So those of you who may have worked with us, those might be some familiar names to you as well, but they help with the follow-up when invoices come through at the end of the contract period.
Okay, so I'm going to read the intent of the 2024 Summer Transition Program request for proposals. Nebraska Vocational Rehabilitation, Nebraska VR, request proposals for up to $49,000 for the development and implementation of innovative short-term programs to provide up to one of the pre-employment transition services for students with disabilities during the summer of 2024. The Workplace Innovation Opportunities Act, WIOA, mandates VR agencies to set aside 15% of their budgets for pre-employment transition services. And one of the several initiatives in the area of pre-employment transition services includes this RFP. Nebraska VR intends to contract with up to, I guess we don't have an amount of applicants, but we intend to contract with them from April 1st of 2024 through July 31st of 2024 to develop and implement pre-employment transition services for eligible and potentially eligible students with disabilities ages 14 to 21 enrolled in school during the 2023-2024 school year. Is there any questions? The notice of the request of proposals came out December 1st. And then we're having the meeting today, and the proposals due date is January 12th, 2024 at 5 p.m. Central Time. And then we are going to notify the selected proposals by February 9th of 2024. I can just open it up for questions, concerns, anything that you may have that you'd like to discuss regarding the.
Hey, Lupe, Chris from Madonna here.
Sure.
Quick question, actually two quick questions. First, do these requests for proposals, basically like this specific one, look the same each year as far as what you need to apply with?
Sometimes we do make tweaks to it or change it a little bit, but it's similar to the one that we had last year, I would say, other than last year we limited it to 10 programs, and this year we don't necessarily have a limit of programs.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. And then the second question is, if someone is selected for this year, do you just have to redo it every year, or is there some sort of like locked in so you can keep repeating it year to year without having to go through the whole request for proposal, or is that a yearly requirement?
That is a yearly requirement.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep.
Yes.
All good. Just wanted to clarify.
Okay.
Hey, Lupe, Sam Comfort from Angel Guardians. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Just a quick question, I guess. I looked through the scoring chart briefly, but I guess I either didn't pay attention or need clarification. Are you looking for programs that address multiple pre-ed categories, or if it's just work-based learning is the opportunity, does that impact the scoring of the application?
No, actually what we're wanting is a program that just focuses on one of the 5 services.
Great, thank you.
Hi, Loopy. My name is Heidi Barbaker, and I'm from PCG. And I was wondering, are you expecting the services to be face-to-face services, or could they be virtual services?
No, we want face-to-face services.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Hey, Lupe,
Michaela
Chris again. Oh, go ahead.
ahead.
I'll wait. Go ahead.
All right, I'm Michaela Shorts, ESU 6 here. Question on the individual meeting sessions for the accounting portion of this. Will those be required this year, or are they recommended? Can you shed some light onto the budget process and any changes?
So Amy, do you want to address that?
Hi, Michaela. So
Hey, Amy.
we would encourage that if you have questions to definitely reach out. I'm always more than willing, especially if you were to be like a new program selected. Nebraska VR's requirements through our federal partner through Rehabilitation Services Administration, they have different requirements than any other NDE program that you may have worked with before. And so I would encourage that if you, before you submit your billing, that if your billing department wants to meet with myself, Pam, Melissa, we're more than willing to do that. We're not going to require it this year. I think we took that out. But we definitely encourage it if you have questions. Obviously, we put in there some very specific guidance on final billing in the RFP, hoping that that will help, but always knowing that you can reach out to myself and I can help with any kind of questions for that billing.
I think
Thank you.
Chris, did you have a question?
Yes, sorry, I'm driving and trying to be safe over here. Do you mind just giving an example or two of what a couple successful programs like this have looked like in the past, how they've kind of built them out, what the learning has looked like, what the experiences have looked like?
So, I guess some of the ones that we had last year were set up as work-based learning experiences. And so there was a piece of just discussing like work readiness skills, but the majority of it was they were out into the community and they were working and learning those skills that they need to be a successful employee.
Okay, yep. And has any included like a classroom type portion at all, or is that kind of based on each individual's proposed program?
Yes, there have been some that have done a couple hours in the classroom and then a couple hours out in the work, out in the businesses. So they kind of did those kind of different. Each program did that a little bit different, but yes, there was definitely a classroom component to some of them.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much.
So I guess I also want to add that the programs that they've had in the past, they didn't go the whole time from April all the way through the end of July. So some of them went like a month, some of them went a couple months. So how long you have your program is totally up to you.
Lindsay Brown, who's another one of our program directors for transition, added in the chat. Because Chris, I heard you say that you were driving, that some of our programs only last for even a week. So programs can really vary in length of service for the clients throughout the summer.
Yeah, there's no contact requirement, like it has to be X amount of time or anything like that.
And I also see another question in the chat that says proposed number of participants. So that also varies according to each program, just depending on, some schools do it and, it's a handful. And of course, there's other programs that are 20, 30 kids or more. So that also varies. And we're not like putting on, it has to be so many students involved.
To answer Allison's question, yes, you get to decide what service you're going to provide. There's no, we don't decide that for you. You get to submit and then explain how you're going to provide that service to students.
Another question that was in the chat, are we able to deliver services virtually? We want those face to face in person. The services. Another question came up about how are providers matched with clients? What we want is for the programs to do some sort of advertising, have flyers, things like that to get to the students that might be interested in the program. So, and that's part of the proposal that we want to know is how you're going to recruit students to be a part of your program.
You can work with the local VR offices and the teams that work with pre-employment transition students to develop that, but we would expect that the grantees or the people that we go into contract with would develop what their marketing strategy would be to students.
Thank you, Sam.
There's over 3,000 students. No, wait, I think I'm saying that wrong. I think it's Amy, Loopy, correct me. Is it 3,000 students that are potentially eligible that we're serving?
I believe so.
Yes.
Around there, yes.
Yes.
Another quick question. Is there any requirement of a certified teacher or anything providing a part of that service, or are job coaches, worksite skills trainers, DSPs, are those acceptable as staff to more or less run the day-to-day?
There's no
Yes.
requirement for a certified teacher. In the proposal, you have to outline who your staff will be, not necessarily their names, but like what their roles will be to support the students. But no, there does not need to be a certified teacher.
So I just got a question and I feel like it's a great question. So Angie, I'm going to share it with everyone. It's about allowable expenses. And if we'd had any changes in our federal regulations. Um, Unfortunately, Angie, the answer to your question is no. We have not had any changes where those things are allowed. In the short of it, a few things not allowed are food items or transportation expenses for students. Um, Food items are allowable if they are related directly to the service being provided. So if you are doing something like an activity for job readiness where you're working to prepare students in preparing food or to serve or to work in any kind of industry around food, then we could work on making that allowable expense. However, to provide like meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, those things are not an allowable expense under the 2 CFRs. So unfortunately, that is not. We also cannot use federal dollars to provide transportation for students. However, we can reimburse mileage for staff. So I hope that answered your question, Angie. I'm sorry. I know we always hope and wish for some changes, especially when it comes to these transition aged youth. But unfortunately, it has not come about yet.
Can I add a piece to that part, Amy? That isn't to say that you can't have in-kind donations, or you can utilize other resources to provide those services. It's just that we can't pay for those services. I just thought I would add that piece because sometimes people get creative with that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lindsay. You're right. Yep. So I just got another question. Can you explain the target population section of the RFP? It talks about participants needing to have assigned Nebraska VR pre-ETS transition services consent, but then it says other students could be included without IEPs or 504. So Loopy, Lindsay, as program directors, I'm going to go ahead and let you take this question.
So what that means is our definition of student is a student with a disability. That could be a student receiving special education services, a student receiving 504 accommodations, or a student with a disability that does not receive IEP or 504 accommodations. That is separate from you need to have a pre-employment transition consent. The pre-employment transition consent allows VR to pay federal funds for that student. So you could target students that aren't currently being served by VR. We would just say before the start of the program, you would need to collect those consent forms so students could receive federal funds and receive those services from us or from your agency through, or us paying your agency to provide those services. Hopefully I said that okay.
The next question is, do service providers need copies of the pre-ETS agreements or do they only need to be shared within VR? So I believe you're probably talking about the pre-ETS consent and release. Those only need to be shared with VR, I think. Just as long as we get a copy of those, that would be what would be most important.
Typically, what we have you do is share your participant list, and then we can cross-reference it to make sure that those students are signed up in our database. If they're not, we'll let you know so you can collect that pre-employment transition consent. But students that already are receiving services from Nebraska VR do not need a new consent form. We can utilize the consent form already on file. I'll just add, it's exciting to see new people here that we have not worked with before. So this is your place to ask questions. So if you have them, ask now. I think this is a great place to kind of share kind of the process and how we work through this with potential people we're going to contract with.
The next question is, if we have questions during the process, who do we reach out to? And so you can reach out to one of us, or there is an email that the RFP, the proposals need to be sent to. You can send your question to that email address. And I'm gonna I'll tell you what that email address is in just a second.
I just dropped it in the chat, Loopy.
Did you? Okay, thank you. I'm like,
Yes, no problem.
Just for the record, in case I don't know if when this is shared on our website, it's just vr.summerprograms@nebraska.gov.
So our plans are to stay on until the end of the session. I'm sorry. Did somebody have a question?
I think it was an accidental unmute mute situation. So
Oh, I think so. Okay, we're planning on staying on until the allotted time, which is until 4:30. So, you know, if you can go ahead and leave if you want to, you can stay on if you just want to hear in case there's other individuals that have questions.
Loopy, are we posting this anywhere? The recording?
Yes, we will be posting the recording, and we'll be posting the questions that were asked today, also on our website.
So if you're not able to stick around till 4:30 and you want to see if anything came up later, we'll get that put up and then you can check for any additional questions there too. So we just got another question. Could part of the award dollars be used to pay a wage to students who earn a credential and who then work internship hours?
Unfortunately, no, that's not one of the 5 required services that are listed in the RFP. That is a VR employment service, not a pre-employment service. So we wouldn't be able to pay for a credential through the summer funds.
Hi, I've got a question. This is Beverly. The reason why I asked that question about the work-based learning experience was I'm trying to understand, this is my first time being on a call like this and considering submitting a proposal. The pre-employment transition services number 2, work-based learning experiences talks about, you know, job shadowing, workplace site visits, work opportunities, paid or unpaid internships, the transferable skills, and then summer employment. So that's why I was wondering about paying individuals after they've earned a credential.
So the student can get paid by doing a work-based learning experience. And a work-based learning experience, a paid work-based learning experience would be for the purpose of learning more about a job or a career, or learning those job skills, those job readiness skills. So those would be the reasons why you would set
It's
up a work-based learning experience.
I think it's the credential part that takes it past that PREETS transition service. And I'm not a program director, so both of you please feel free to jump in and correct me.
No,
But
you're correct. That's correct. Yeah, it's
So
the
it's-
credential piece.
Yep. So as long as they're just doing like an internship, but it's not because they are earning or did earn that credential, then it's a pre-ed service. If they're learning about the employment or about the work skills that they need to have that job, then it's fine. They just can't be doing it for a credential. The other thing I wanted to go back to, I'm sorry, to Angie, when we talked earlier about allowed and unallowed expenses, is that we cannot, through the contract, pay for a worksite skills trainer for one-to-one support for students either. That is not allowed through the contract. That would have to be a conversation that if that's something that's needed would have to be taken to the VR offices to see if that's appropriate for a student. We do get that question occasionally if there's a way to have a job coach specifically for one-to-one for a student. That's not allowable underneath this contract. You would have to have a separate discussion. We also cannot purchase items to be given away. So like t-shirts, knapsacks, things that are just basically kind of like a promotional item or things that don't have anything directly service related for the client can't be purchased with these funds either. Pete had a good question. Does that include if a t-shirt is used as a uniform? No, if the work-based learning experience requires a uniform, then that purchase is allowable under these funds. Good question, Pete. Thank you.
Angie, for the, oh, go ahead, Amy, you're the
No, go
fiscal
ahead.
guru. I was just gonna say for this specific RFP, yes, 49K is the maximum amount. I don't know if you're asking about if you contract with us for other RFPs. I'm not exactly sure how to answer that part of your question, but for this specific one, yes, 49 is the ceiling.
That's what I was thinking you might be meaning, Angie. I think the answer we would have to give you right now is we don't know. We haven't had that come up in recent years. I think for now, that's the best answer that we can give. We would have to take that back and see if we could award two contracts, because if they were two separate projects for two different services, but being done by one agency, it couldn't be on one contract because the RFP is set up for that each contract would be one service, one project. So that is not clear in the RFP if a agency could be awarded more than one contract under this RFP. So I think we'll need to take that back to our leadership team and get that clarified.
Thank you, Allison, for coming. Beverly has a question about, I've got a specific question about credentials. What is VR's definition of credential? Does it have to be granted from a college or a post-secondary provider?
This RFP does not cover credentials, so I just want to make clear that this would not cover that. A credential, let me think how to answer that. A credential is any kind of certification license that would help you with job development. But again, this specific RFP cannot pay for credentials.
That makes sense. I'm just not certain if I have a credential. I think that's the issue.
Oh, you specifically have a credential?
So we've got mobile device repair training, and it's a week-long boot camp. And it is something that is sponsored by all the original equipment manufacturers like Apple, Verizon, Samsung, Google, but it's not at a college. But it's training to become mobile device repair certified and technicians in that field. So
Does it come with, so at the end of it, does it come with like a certification where like you could go and be like a certified repair person for this company or whatever?
it does, but it wouldn't have to.
So
There's multiple ways to set the boot camp up. And there's multiple device modes. So that's the thing.
I think, Beverly, when we think about pre-employment services, it's all about exposure and exploration. And so it's not about necessarily career development. And so I would keep that in mind, exposure and exploration. So if you can set your boot camp around those pieces, then it could be accepted. But if it goes beyond exploration and exposure, then it falls out of the realm of pre-employment transition services.
Okay, exposure and exploration. Thank you for those words. Appreciate it.